Safety, Steve McCraw, General Seltzer, the Major General for the National Guard, and Mike Banks, the Texas Border Czar. Let me just start out by making a point that too many people forget, and I insist that you never forget. 3 years ago, we had the lowest number of border crossings in decades. And there was a reason why we had such a low number of border crossings 3 years ago. It's because we had a president who had implemented 4 very simple policies that led to that dramatic decrease in illegal border crossings. One is to end catch and release. Another is to implement Title 42. Another is to implement the Remain in Mexico policy. And the other is to build a border wall. And maybe you could add to that an attitude that if you want to come to the United States of America, come here legally, not illegally. And as soon as President Biden took office, he eliminated all of those policies that President Trump put in place and also issued basically an open invitation to anybody in the world that they can come here to the United States and cross our border illegally with no consequences. And the result was extraordinarily predictable. And that is, this past year, we saw the highest number of illegal immigrants ever who were apprehended coming across our border. Well, Texas is stepping up. And we have done more than any state has ever done. And there's a reason for it. Texans, as well as our fellow Americans, they are furious about the lawlessness caused by President Biden's open border policies. And they should be angry about that. And it's because of that that I declared border security to be an emergency item this session for us to not only address, but to address quickly because of the need for us to be even more proactive to deal with the border. There are several reasons why we need to be more proactive. The upcoming elimination of Title 42 is going to be bringing even more people across our border. It is expected to expire in May. According to federal estimates themselves, they said that once Title 42 is eliminated, we can expect up to 18,000 people crossing the border a day. Calculate that, and that would be more than 6 million people crossing the border a year because of the elimination of this one last bar to people coming across the border. The magnet will just continue to increase. And we're seeing that occur as we speak. In January, the numbers are always low about the number of people coming across the border. We've already seen upticks in what has happened from January to February. And we have information about people who are in Central America right now making their way toward the border. And we are working on strategies to make sure that Texas is going to be prepared. To the extent that any of this information gets beyond our borders, we're sending a message today. And that is, if you're coming toward the United States of America and you are thinking about crossing our border and you're thinking about making your border crossing in the state of Texas, you're picking the wrong state to enter into or to try to enter into, because we're going to do everything we can to keep you out of our border, to keep you out of our country. But I want to give you an example of how the increase has occurred in just the time period since right before Biden took office till today. In February of 2020, in the 1 week, February the 12th of 2020, in the entire border, there were 3,985 people apprehended. Is that entire border? The Texas border. 3,000, so just under 4,000 people apprehended coming across the Texas border in February of 20, which was the last February that President Trump was in office. The first February that Biden was in office, it went from 3,985 to 13,672 in just 1 week in February, that very same week. And then the year after that, that very same week, it jumped to 21,560. And so it went up about fivefold, 5 times in just that 1 week period, year after year after year, because of Biden's open border policies. Well, what Texas has done is we have deployed the Texas National Guard far more than any state ever in the history of the United States of America to repel and to turn back people who are trying to cross the border illegally. We have deployed the Texas Department of Public Safety, and they have arrested more than 25,000 criminals who got past the Border Patrol. Had DPS not been on the border making these arrests, there would have been dangerous criminals who got away into the United States or into the state of Texas that would have posed a very serious danger to our populace. And so we thank DPS for doing that. In addition to that, altogether, they have apprehended more than 330,000 gotaways who got away from the Border Patrol or otherwise got through the gaps. And so once again, had DPS and the National Guard not been there, that would have been hundreds of thousands of more people who were able to get into the country illegally. But most prolifically is what DPS has done with fentanyl, because DPS alone has seized enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in the entire United States of America. Had DPS not seized that fentanyl that got past Border Patrol, there's no telling how many Americans would have died because of that fentanyl spread across the streets of our country. Also, to accelerate the crackdown on the Mexican drug cartels, the real cause of all of this, I declared them as terrorist organizations to empower Texas law enforcement to use advanced strategies to go after not just the cartels, but all of their assets that are here in the state of Texas, so we can do everything possible to put these Mexican drug cartels out of business. And then to help relieve small border towns, Del Rio and places like that, that have no capability to house and take care of the thousands of migrants who are dropped in their communities by Border Patrol. That led to the busing operation to relieve the congestion in these small communities where we are busing the migrants that were dropped off by Border Patrol to self-identified sanctuary cities in other parts of the United States. It is kind of interesting that one of the locations where we were dropping them off to, New York, condemned Texas for busing them to New York, only to learn that New York is now busing them to Canada. And then on top of all that, Texas is the only state in the history of the United States of America that it has ever built its own border wall. We have been in the process over the past year of acquiring rights on land owned by private landowners that will allow us to accelerate the process of building the border wall over this coming year. There's a possibility, depending upon how the construction process works, where by the end of this calendar year, Texas as a state may have added more border wall than the Trump administration did for the United States of America during his 4 years in office. Bottom line is that the Texas National Guard and DPS troopers, they are working around the clock under the leadership of Major General Seltzer and Colonel McCraw. And now also, Texas has done something no state has ever done. I announced last month that we have our own border czar, the man to my left, Mike Banks. He served in the Border Patrol in leadership positions for about 23 years, and he brings a high level of expertise. It's important to emphasize that on his first day in office, he spent more time on the border as the Texas border czar than Kamala Harris, the federal border czar, has spent in years in office. Not just that, but He operates right here out of Weslaco, and he's up and down the border every single day, working and collaborating not just with DPS and the National Guard, but working with local officials, whether they be mayors or county commissioners or sheriffs. And so Texas as a state is now operating more in sync with local communities better than we ever have because of the role of coordinator that Mike Banks, the Texas Board of Czar, is playing. And very importantly, listen, this is an issue for the state of Texas to deal with. And we have to deal with it only because the federal government is not doing its job. And now that we're in session, we have the leadership of the state legislature that are fully engaged. And with us include Senator Birdwell and Representative Guillen. And I appreciate what they've done before. They've already issued analyses and reports even long before today about what's going on the border. But we will be working in collaboration with them over the course of the remainder of the session on this emergency item to make sure that Texas is doing everything we possibly can to secure the border. And so I look forward to working with them to make sure that we have the funds needed to secure the border, to protect Texans from the lawlessness created by Biden's open border policies, and to make sure that we continue to build more border wall. And with that, I will turn the mic over to Senator Birdwell to tell you more about his perspective.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for your leadership on this critical issue. The state of Texas is in a certainly difficult situation, having 1,200 of the 1,900 miles of international border with Mexico. We are, under the governor's leadership, under Operation Lone Star, we are, and I'll use this term very carefully, we're making our belligerent opponents in the cartels pay a price for plying their wares in the state of Texas, and doing so as a means to make sure in Operation Lone Star that we're making sure that Texans' property, lives are safe to the best of our ability, and the governor's acting within all legal authority that he has. If the Biden administration does not secure the border, the options remaining to Texas are even uglier than what we're dealing with right now. That's why this is so important. And Governor, thank you very much for the leadership that you've given us, both in the legislature and in the state as a whole, for what's happening here, because we cannot just simply allow the people of Texas, their property, their lives, to just be turned over to the mercies of the cartels. So that's why we're here doing this.
Sure.
Hooah.
Thank you. Thank you for your leadership. And now Representative Guillen.
Thank you, Governor. As you all know, I represent 11 counties south of San Antonio, and I'm from the Valley. I live in Starr County. I represent 2 counties on the Texas-Mexico border, Starr and Zapata counties. And I've lived in Starr County my whole life, many generations there. I've lived about a mile from the Texas-Mexico border just about my entire life. This Starr County, Rio Grande City, is where I've chosen to raise my family, where my kids go to school. As border residents, as Texans, we expect safe and orderly communities. And although our federal government doesn't appear to be fully invested in doing so, the state of Texas, with the leadership of Governor Greg Abbott, is committed to bringing order to the border. We're committed to helping keep violence from spilling over, to help bring order to our broken immigration system, and to keep fentanyl and other illicit substances off of our streets. Over the coming days, we'll finish filing our border security package that showcases our latest efforts to bring order to the border. And I look forward to working with Senator Birdwell and Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick, Speaker Phelan, and my colleagues in the House and Senate in order to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Director McCraw with the Texas Department of Public Safety.
Well, thank you, Governor. Senator, Representative, no governor and no state legislature has done more to assist the Border Patrol with securing the national border with Mexico than you have. God bless you. Thank you. It matters. An unsecured international border has consequences, and we're seeing these consequences throughout Texas, but we're seeing it throughout the nation. One of those consequences is that certainly the cartels are reaping billions of dollars from human trafficking right now as we speak. And I say trafficking because it's not long smuggling in terms of how they're doing the smuggling, but also in terms of certainly drugs. And methamphetamine, 19 tons thus far DPS has seized in terms of methamphetamine alone. But fentanyl, Governor, and I know that is a major concern of yours. And the idea that one pill kills is not just a fancy slogan to scare tactics, it's a reality. The bottom line is when the DA administrator says that 6 out of every 10 pills that they test that lookalikes of oxycodone, Percocet, or even Adderall, okay, is a lethal dose of fentanyl is alarming and should be alarming to every parent and grandparent, and it's something you have to have that conversation with your kids. There's no more experimentation. Those days are gone. The cartels don't care about your kids. The cartels care about making money, period. And thank you for your leadership, and we welcome the border czar, and who knows a little bit about the border. It's very helpful. We don't have to translate for him. He's going to go through D.C. You allow us to work with him. We don't have to call Washington, so appreciate it.
So you said something that I think I misheard, or maybe this, I think I heard you say that you have seized 19 tons of methamphetamine?
Yes, sir. 19 tons of
That's just
methamphetamine, DPS alone.
incomprehensible.
Just DPS alone. And people forget that it was always the leading drug of overdose in Texas and responsible for a lot of violence and deaths throughout the state. So 19 tons. And the potency of it has grown exponentially. It's no longer, something cooked in a hotel room. You don't need to. They got factories in terms of producing high-quality methamphetamine. And just like synthetic opiates, like fentanyl, they don't need to grow anything. They don't need to harvest anything. Plain and simple, they can do it 24/7 with the right precursor chemicals from China, thank you very much, in India, okay? And all that, so it's all they need to be able to produce pure meth and pure fentanyl.
Okay, well, thank you. And now Major General Seltzer with the Texas National Guard.
Thank you, Governor. Chairman Birdwell, Chairman Guillen, and to the whole Texas legislature, thank you for your support of the Texas Military Department and Operation Lone Star as a whole. The border crisis is not only a threat to our national security, it's a threat to our national sovereignty. When you have transnational criminal organizations, such as drug cartels, that control the timing, the tempo, the location, the means to breach and violate your national territorial boundaries, you have a risk to your sovereignty. Fortunately for us in Texas, we have a governor who is relentless in his actions of protecting Texas sovereignty, securing the border, and maintaining the rule of law. To this end, the Texas National Guard is decisively engaged along the border from El Paso down to Brownsville to secure the border, stop the smuggling of drugs, people, and weapons, and prevent, detect, and interdict transnational criminal organizations along our border. We have built over 72 miles worth of permanent fencing. We have put over 58 miles of concertina wire up. In El Paso alone, we have put anti-climb fencing to protect downtown El Paso and also the dangerous Highway 375 illegal crossing area. On the water, we have our boat teams operating. In the air, we have our helicopters. We have a drone program, which we're expanding to 28 aircraft and 45 pilots. And on the land, we have brush teams, security points, and roving patrols. And we are ready to continue this operation well into the foreseeable future. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. And now the Texas Border Czar, Mike Banks.
Thank you, Governor. Chairman, thank you. So as the Governor said, since I came on about 3 weeks ago, I've been up and down the border with Texas. I've been meeting with mayors. I've been meeting with chiefs of police, judges, elected officials, DPS, and the Texas military. And I hear the same thing everywhere I go, right? It's the gotaways that are escaping and getting into this country, right, that pose a threat. It is unknown what they are, where they're coming from, or what their intention is. The number of drugs that are getting through, you hear so often that, oh, all the drugs come through the port of entry. Well, it's easy to measure what you're apprehending at a port of entry, which is a controlled point to come through. But when you've got 1.2 million gotaways coming into this country unaccounted for, right, we would all be foolish if we thought that people weren't coming here bringing narcotics with them. the 360 million doses of fentanyl, that's what we've been able to catch. That's from the gotaways that didn't happen. So, Governor, thank you for the approach you're taking. Chairman Guillen, and I thank both of you. I'm going to continue doing everything in my power to make Texas the least desirable place for illegal migration to happen. And I'm going to continue working with DPS and with Texas military, along with Texas facilities. Infrastructure, technology, those are things that we're going to keep pushing hard for on the border. The governor talked about the miles that we want to put up. We want to be aggressive. We want to put them up because the traffic is going to go to the path of least resistance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One last point, and that is I explained earlier, and as we all know, with the elimination of Title 42, there's going to be more people trying to come across the border. What I did not tell you at the time is something that is reprehensible by Joe Biden and his administration. Up until now, the United States has had what are called aerostats, which are balloons in the air that are able to obtain information about what may be coming our way or what may be taking place in the state of Texas or in the United States. At the time when we need them the most, the Biden administration is taking them down, eliminating one of the essential tools that we need, making it even harder for the United States to be able to address the unprecedented number of people who are trying to enter illegally. Why the Biden administration is doing that makes no sense, and no one has any clue why Biden would be making it even easier for people to come into our country illegally. With that, we'll take a few questions. Go ahead.
Do you feel that Border Patrol is ready once Title 42 is no longer being used?
So,
For Mike Banks?
I'm going to answer first, and I'll let Mike Banks answer, being he's a former Border Patrol agent. And I bet he'll echo what I'm about to tell you. And that is, what Border Patrol has largely been relegated to is paper pushers. They write reports with the high volume of people coming in, and they're not patrolling the border, which is what their job is. And because they're processing paper of the high volume of people coming in, that makes it so much easier for the cartels to find open gaps to get people into this country, or dangerous people into this country, including people who have been on the terrorist watch list, get into this country. And so it's those gaps that we're trying to fill, caused by the fact that the Border Patrol are not fully able to patrol the border. But Mike Banks knows far more about this than I do. I'll let him add more.
So I think your question was, is the Border Patrol ready for Title 42 to go away? Right? I can't speak on behalf of the Border Patrol, but I can tell you this. The Border Patrol is already overwhelmed with the mass numbers of migrants coming across that is pulling them off of the line. So as the governor said, they are inside doing the processing, which has created these massive gaps, which is why you see Texas military and DPS out there trying to fill those gaps. The gaps are going to become wider because more agents are going to have to be pulled off of the line to deal with that. It was just reported that the Border Patrol is soliciting for agents from the southwest border to go to the northern border because they've seen a 1,200% increase in Mexican citizens that are flying into Canada and crossing into the United States, which again is creating more gaps. Absent a policy change, these gaps are going to continue, and I don't think anyone is as ready as the state of Texas is for what's going to come when Title 42 goes away.
Governor, although the new Spectrum News 1, what is your opinion of the new asylum process that the Biden administration set in place with the CBP-1 app? They say that it's making things more orderly. What have you observed, and what is your opinion to the matter? Also, anyone else who might like to answer that?
Well, that topic is a topic that we discussed at length before you all came in. And everyone agrees that Biden's new approach about using this app to bring people in is going to entice even more people to enter illegally. They are allowing, about 30,000 people per month to enter legally through ports of entry. What that's going to do is going to attract 5 or 10 times that many people to try to reach the port of entry, to be able to come across the border. And when they are not allowed to come across the border through the port of entry, they will then try to cross between the ports of entry. And so what we all agree is that Biden's policy is going to attract even more people to come to this region to cross the border illegally, making illegal immigration an even worse problem.
Governor Abbott,
Recently,
the
in the
uptake on
RGB, we have-
Chinese that have been,
One at a time.
Yeah, sorry. In the RGB, we have recently seen a lot of pursuits involving immigrants. What are the consequences for those helping them mobilize once they are in? There is a lot of incidents like that, a lot of chase, a lot of, arrests made them, but what are the consequences for that?
So, I mean, you're talking about the consequences for those who are driving the getaway vehicles? So, they are involved in smuggling. Smuggling is a crime. We focus on trying to arrest the smugglers and put them behind bars. However, I do not feel satisfied with the legal consequences. And that's why in my State of the State address last week, I said that for these people who are driving these smuggling vehicles away, smuggling people here in the state of Texas, I want a mandatory minimum of 10 years behind bars for these people who are involved in the smuggling operations, who are really just working in collaboration with the cartels. And perhaps they should be getting even more than 10 years behind bars. But I want to take this out of the hands of judges of being able to decide what the length of time should be, or district attorneys or whatever. If they're arrested for smuggling somebody, they're going to wind up behind bars for at least 10 years in the state of Texas.
Governor, twofold question. Number one is the uptick in Chinese being captured here in the RGB. And number two is social media and the targeting of minors to do this smuggling.
It's disturbing on several parts, and I'm going to say a little bit about it, but we were, again, talking about this before you came in, and Mike Banks has some observations about the Chinese based upon his long history with the Border Patrol. But first, it's disturbing and astonishing that we're seeing such a dramatic increase in the number of Chinese coming here. Here's what no one really knows. Who are these people? Why are they coming here? Are they seeking asylum? Do we have a high volume of people, some of whom may legitimately be seeking asylum? But if only 1 out of 100 are here for espionage purposes or terrorism purposes, it is an extraordinary danger to this country. It's just one of the many ways the President of the United States, with his open border policies, is endangering our country and failing at his foremost job, and that is national security. And then your other question?
Social media.
Oh,
and
yeah.
minors.
And so, I mean, again, with the proliferation of social media, including things like TikTok, we are seeing the cartels attract young people to participate in smuggling migrants here in the state of Texas. And anybody who is going on social media and saying, man, I can make $1,000 by driving a car of immigrants, we're sending a message to them. We're going to find you, we're going to arrest you, we're going to put you behind bars for at least 10 years. That said, I'll let Mike Banks tell you his perspective about the Chinese. Hold on 1 second.
And so with regards to Chinese, they're coming because the policy allows them to be released. You know, if there is no consequence for actions, then I mean, why not come, right? And I mean, who doesn't want to come to this great country, right? But they need to do it the proper way, the legal way, to be vetted. And so until there's a policy change, you're going to see Chinese continue to come.
Go ahead.
Governor Abbott, on the way over here, I talked to Stacy Forbes, who I'm sure you worked with. He was the deputy chief of the Department of Homeland Security for this region for a long time. And he said this project that I'm going to bring up for you and Ryan, I'd like a response to you and Ryan, if you wouldn't mind. Would you both consider a priority in this section of funding a Homeland Security broadband service beginning at Fort Mansfield and then ending at 2 land bridges at Rio Grande City and Roma? This is basically a broadband service that would run equidistant between the Rio Grande River and the checkpoints. It's on the no man's land. And Stacy Forbes said this is 100% something that needs to be done by an entity that could do it, because it's not a high profit thing, but it's something that definitely needs to be done for Homeland Security. If you, Governor, or you, Ryan, Chairman Ryan, get this funded as a priority before the next session, we need to have it now, because the priority is at Fort Mansfield, all that economy that's transforming that county is moving over to your county, and so this fits right in not only Homeland Security, but economic development.
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, we have looked at it and are working on several issues along those lines that improve communications, especially among law enforcement in these areas, as well as transportation. So two things that we look at would be enhancing communication capabilities for law enforcement, and then also improving transportation capabilities, such as building roads along either fence lines, walled lines, or other areas that will make it easier for law enforcement to get through there. And then a third I'll throw in is doing more to eradicating the carrizo cane. And so we're working on all those issues. Those are issues that probably the legislators, I know they're working on at least several of those issues, and maybe more. But do you want to, Ryan, get into that too?
Yeah, it's certainly something that is interesting, and I'd like to see the details on. And we'll work with you, Ron, in the future, here in the near future, on understanding what the project is and the scope of it, and see what we can do to help.
Two more questions. Governor, you say you really want to hurt the Mexican cartels. Can Texas do anything more about stopping the weapons and guns going south, either you or the borders are? Is that an issue that concerns you?
Yeah, listen, the guns go both north and south. They don't go in one direction. And we do everything we possibly can to seize illegal guns. One thing that I mentioned in my State of the State address is I want to focus on going after the criminals who have guns. Most gun crimes are committed by criminals who have guns illegally. And so we have a keen focus, for one, to go after those people. But for another, I'm asking for a mandatory minimum jail sentence of at least 10 years for any criminal who's possessing guns illegally. And so, yes, we want to be very aggressive about that.
Last question.
All right. Thank you all.